I declare the meeting open and welcome you to this month's meeting of Council. The recording of this Council meeting will be available to the public on Council's website for the minimum period of 6 months. In accordance with Council's policy, I will now ask Council staff to confirm that the recording has commenced. Thank you. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the Southeast Nation, the Malacadee people of the Yuin River, the people of the far south. We recognise their continuing connection to land, water and culture. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. I'd now like to say which council staff we have, councillors we have in attendance tonight. We have Councillor Marco May, Acting Deputy Mayor Sue Clark. We have Councillor Joanne Lovell and Councillor Rob Prince. And I'll pass over to the Director of Legal and Governance to introduce the staff, please.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. We do have an apology from General Manager Jason Brown tonight, unable to make it. On my left, we have Director Corporate Services, David Spinks. On my right, I have Director Infrastructure Services, and for the last time at a council meeting, Acting Director Environment and Development Services, Lachlan Krantz. Manager Development Services, Michael Bartlett. We also have in the room ICT Business Systems Officer, Michael Glazer, and Executive Assistant, Sandy Rustil.
Thank you. We have apologies. I have one for Michael Newell. Do we have any leave of absence? No absent. Declarations of interest. I have a declaration that I will hand over to you. Do I read that out now or later?
If you just read it,
Yep.
read out the agenda item.
Okay, the agenda items is 9.009/22 and 9.010/22 in the petition section. Thank you.
Acting Mayor, you'll also note the General Manager had raised an interest in agenda items 9.010 and 20.053, so
Thank you.
did not participate in the writing of those reports.
Thank you. Okay, 4, confirmation of minutes, 4.008/22. Do I have a councillor to move the minutes? Are confirmed of the ordinary meeting of council 27th of July 2022 as circulated to be confirmed. Councillor Lovell and Councillor O'May. Is there any councillor that wishes to make any changes? No? Okay. Legislative items, Director. Oh, do we have to do that one? Okay. Okay, can I put that motion forward? And all in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors and the motion is no. Number 5, legislative items.
Neil, Acting Mayor.
Urgent matters.
Neil, Acting Mayor.
Announcements. Do any councillors have any announcements they wish to make? Yes, Councillor Prince.
Only the one that to anyone who's watching at home, if you are not subscribed to the Council YouTube channel, it would be amazing if you could subscribe to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, public participation. We have public question time. We had answers to previous questions taken on notice, and they have been displayed on our web for the answers. There was 4 questions received, and a summary is as follows, without notice, and they were Mr. Archie Donnelly regarding leadership training, Mr. Archie Donnelly regarding General Manager's recruitment panel, Mr. Mark Jessup regarding consultants for TPC hearings, and Mr. Mark Jessup regarding Ranelagh Recreation Ground toilet upgrades. As previously mentioned, these questions and responses can be found on the website and will be included in the minutes. Okay, so from the gallery. To those community members joining us in the gallery tonight, would like to ask a question. We're always looking to continually improve the way we do things and to achieve maximum benefit for the community with public question time. We have made some recent changes. The number of questions previously prior to council meetings has been ranging from 6 to 25. These responses are uploaded to our webpage by 5 p.m. prior to the meeting and also included in the minutes. In April 2022, we made the decision to no longer read out every question and response, as this was seen to have been having little value given the questions are posted on the website and recorded in the minutes of the meeting. The Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulations 2015, Section 31(3) states the chairperson of an ordinary council meeting must ensure that, if required, at least 15 minutes of that meeting is made available for questions by members of the public. It is a juggling act to ensure the meeting keeps moving along to cover all agenda items in a reasonable time frame and allowing sufficient opportunity for community members to ask the questions they want to ask. Feedback from the community following last month's ordinary council meeting was that 25 minutes of public question time, further time should have been made available for some community members at the meeting to have the opportunity to ask subsequent questions. A review of the 25-minute public question time period identified that some members of the community provided significant background to their question. Also noted was that the background was unnecessary for the question to be responded to. Therefore, with the objective of maximising the opportunity for members of the community to ask more questions in the provided public question time, we request those asking questions avoid background questions. Equally, public statements will not be allowed going forward during this period. Public question time is to be used for questions only, and if we require additional background or context detail to your question, we will request it then. If you have a question, as the chair, I will ask you to come forward to the microphone and identify yourself by name and area where you live. To make things fair and equitable, we have a limit of 2 questions per person. If we can please ask your first question and then we'll go to the others in the gallery before returning for your second question if time permits. We normally allow 15 minutes for question time. All questions asked must be directed to me as the chairperson, and I will answer the question or refer the question to another councillor or the general manager. Every attempt will be made to provide an answer to your question. Debates on questions cannot be entered into. The council cannot make decisions on issues that arise in public question time. So, going forward, is there anyone who would like to come forward and ask a question? Yes, Mr. Sims.
Pat Singh from Leamington, asking a question on behalf of the Huon Valley Residents and Ratepayers Association. First of all, thank you for providing the breakdown of the 762,000 all other expenses item that we asked for last month, and also thank you for adding this to the budget estimates on the council website. There is a wide variety of items included in this table, and it would seem that some of them could have been included elsewhere. Some of them, when combined, are quite significant, with children's services being 130,000, which is well above the stated 30,000 threshold. Putting that aside, there is an item called Productivity Procurement Savings, which is shown as being a negative $120,000. This is also well above the $30,000 threshold, and it is not an expense. It appears to be a savings target of about 1.5% of total expenditure, but does not appear to be explained elsewhere in the budget or in the annual plan. Including this theoretical figure in all other expenses is confusing, as it implies that these savings are to be applied to the items in this category. The expenses listed actually come to 882,000 and not the stated 762,000. Subtracting 120,000 would represent savings of 15%, which seems unrealistic, while savings of 1.5% of total expenditure is a very modest target. Question: how did you come up with the figure of 120,000? How will any savings be identified? And who is responsible for the achievement of these savings? And why not aim for a more significant reduction with a targeted and structured approach? Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Director of Legal and Governance.
I'll pass that over to the Director of Corporate Services.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
There's several sort of points that you raised there. The mere fact that that figure appears in this table, I don't think it should be implied that the savings are going to come from the items listed in the table. The 120,000 saving, and you're right, it is an implied saving, is to be sourced from the entirety of Council's operations. So at the moment, that hasn't been defined. Our annual plan does refer to the fact that one of the initiatives we've included in the budget this year is a new position, which is a Leader of Productivity and Innovation, and that once that person comes on board, and we're just in the recruitment process for that right now, their task, once we put some time has passed to develop a strategy and so forth, their task will be to assist Council to identify innovations and productivity savings, and so at the moment, what they are have not been identified. The person responsible for finding those savings ultimately is the General Manager. And have I answered all your questions? Because there was a few there.
Why not aim for a more significant reduction? But that's not really possible for you to answer. It's hypothetical, I suppose.
Look, it is. It's fair to say that that figure was a starting point. There's nothing to say that we can't exceed that. And I think it's highly likely in future budgets that it may well be a higher figure.
Great.
But for this year, given it's a sort of a new initiative, if you like, it was a starting point.
Great. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the gallery? Yes?
Carol Hurst from Ranelagh. Okay. As a consequence of the petitions relating to the appointment of the General Manager of the Huon Valley Council, I took the time to read the section of the Auditor General's report, October 2021, relating to that appointment. The comments of the Auditor General are of serious concern and cannot be dismissed. In particular, the non-recognition of pecuniary interest of the consultant as interviewer and the consultant's partner as interviewee. The acceptance of counsel of the consultant's recommendations on how to move forward after the conflict of interest had been declared without seeking independent advice.
Okay. Have you the question?
It's very soon. It's just and the media release pertaining to the petition said no action would be taken. So my question is, how will Council redress public trust deficit that has been created by the flawed process of appointing the General Manager?
Okay, thank you. Can I pass that through to, no? To me? Okay, that will be a council decision. That's discussed once we get to petitions. Thank you. Do we have anybody else with a question? Yes, Dr. Smith. Oh, behind you.
Absolutely. Liz Smith, Signet. My question relates to Agenda 9.009/22, and it is about the Code of Conduct Panel findings. In its report in June, the Code of Conduct Panel found that Councillor Doyle and Councillor Newell and presumably all councillors who supported the appointment, in the knowledge of the conflict of interest, had not treated all persons fairly, including the General Manager. This is because, given the amount of public scrutiny relating to this matter, he is now subject to all sorts of uncertainty, doubts and criticism, either genuine or misplaced. Therefore, it seems that employees of the council were also not treated fairly through the flawed recruitment process the council undertook for the appointment of General Manager, because of the position of authority over staff that the General Manager holds. So my question is, I would like responses from the Acting Mayor and the councillors to the following question. In making their decision about the appointment of the General Manager in August and September 2021, did each of the councillors, as individuals, act in the best interests of the community? And did the councillors collectively ensure the fair and equitable treatment of employees of the council, as required of councillors by Section 28, Part 1B and Part 2B3 of the Local Government Act? So would you like me to read the questions again? Yeah.
Thank you very much. My answer to that will be the same as that one before, that it will be dealt with in petitions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Do I have any other questions from the gallery? Yes? Yes?
I don't want to upset anybody behind me.
Am I right?
I just would like to hand this out. That document I've just handed to you is by my erstwhile colleague, Amy Robertson, a summary of a number of the Planning Commission decisions, and I will quote a couple of them just as I talk. So, yes?
We're not going to have a lot of preamble?
No, not much. So the supplementary question to my previous question about the scenic assessment overlay, where I specifically asked the councillors to qualify what scenic assessment has been made on the 3,000 titles. I have two little bits of overlay, point 196 on the front of that page, the Planning Commission decision from Tasman, where it says landscape conservation zoning is for the management of landscape values, not biodiversity values. Okay, point number one.
Yep.
Point number two, I'll just quickly, from 326 a little bit further down, which is the Flinders decision. So these, by the way, are the decisions of the Planning Commission reviewing the LPZs from those organisations. So it says here that unless such values are significant enough to warrant the use of development being curtailed, which a zoning application would do, then conservation covenants, a priority vegetation overlay and the scenic protection overlays can operate perfectly well under the provisions of another zone, such as rural or something else. So the question I still go back to is, of the 3,000 plus titles in the Huon Valley, I suppose I'm saying I don't quite like the answer that I got. I don't think it was detailed enough, to be quite frank. And the question I'm asking is, what actual process for each of those 3,000 titles has the council officers undertaken to specifically determine that there is a landscape value as opposed to a biodiversity value that is significant enough to apply a restrictive zoning such as LCZ, as opposed to what the Flinders decision says, which is call it rural and just say you've got a priority vegetation overlay so you can't chop down all the trees.
Okay.
That's the question.
Thank you very much. We can pass that over to... Yep, thank you. I was quite happy to...
Thanks for the question. I will have to take that on notice because it's a very detailed question, obviously. You know, we have tried to answer this multiple times. We're close to having a Section 35F report coming out, which will provide more detail, obviously, on individual land, those obviously that have been represented against. And the matters that relate to previous decisions of the TPC. We are obviously in consultation with the TPC. We are confident in our position and in the way in which we have applied the guidelines with the available data that's available to us. And some of these questions that you're asking are ultimately ones that are matters that are best placed during the hearings or directly through to the TPC. They are not council's applied the guidelines in good faith with the available data. We do that at the direction of the TPC. We do not control the TPC's decisions, and the guidelines have been consistent for all councils. So we note your concern. We are, I'll say, struggling to get through this process at this point. I have a planning team that are absolutely screaming on this stuff, and these are issues that are beyond council. We have worked in good faith, and I think you'll see that through what we do with the Section 35F report and our responses, and there are certainly responses that the Planning Authority will be recommending a change in the zoning based on evidence that's been provided through the process. So the process is genuine, it's working. Council has no vested interest in applying any one particular zone. We just apply the guidelines as directed. We will go back, we'll attempt to provide more detail to what you're asking now, but we really are, I've got to stress, we are straining to get through our day jobs at the moment with the ongoing questions that relate to this one particular zone, and I'm pleading that you allow us to get through this process and start directing some of these questions to the TPC, and if they're appropriate for the TPC and not to council. I respect your position to ask the questions. I'm just saying we are really struggling, a small team, to continue to answer this stuff in more and more detail every single month.
And our group acknowledges the hard work. Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you for the acknowledgement.
Okay, do we have... Yes, Carol.
Carol Murphy, Signet. Referencing the General Manager's report, the inaugural meeting of the Huon Valley Jobs Hub Single Authority Board was on August the 25th. Who is on the board, and what are the next steps for the board to progress the establishment of the Jobs Hub?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. Nice and direct. Thank you. Can I pass that through to you?
We'll take that on notice. We are putting, the board has met for the first time, and we'll be putting out some information to the public in relation to the board membership and how that will be proceeding.
Okay, do we have any other questions from the gallery? Yes, Amy?
Amy Robertson, Port Huon. Sorry. I received an answer to an LCZ question that in part stated that landscape values and the impacts that proposed uses would have on these is currently considered for applications in rural resource. Where required, the planning authority or developer can rely on the submissions of a suitably qualified person to inform assessment against relevant provisions. Now, I'm looking at that last statement in the context of the 8A guidelines LCZ application to land with landscape values that are identified. And I'm asking whether in assessment of development applications for potentially LCZ zoned land, whether the burden of proof or disproof of landscape values would sit with the planning authority or the owner-developer, particularly in the context of the 8A guidelines intention for identified landscape values, and yet apparently that not being done at this stage.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Pass that through to...
Your Acting Mayor, I'll refer that to the Acting Director.
Thanks for the question. No need to apologise. If you do want answers quicker, though, you can certainly send this kind of detailed things like this through earlier if you can, and we'll attempt to answer it on the night. I will have to take that one on notice. We're not yet operating under the TPC, under the TPS. There's learnings to do from other councils that have adopted this that we'll seek to be informed by, but I don't have an answer for it to hand now. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the gallery? Okay. Oh, yes, Amy?
There's a plan for Taswater to shift the sewage outfall from the Commandy River in the freshwater part of that stream down into the main Huon River at Shipwrights Point. And Council's been consulted on that some time ago. I've read that in the environmental impact statement. I didn't see any mention in the EIS summary of Council mentioning that the Port Huon community has had a will for many years now to develop a footpath that connects the town. That's infrastructure that would be very useful, particularly with a growing community. Did Council mention that potential infrastructure development to Taswater in terms of the pipeline development, and could that be considered?
Yeah.
I'll pass that to the Acting Director.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Thank you. I'll have to take that one on notice as well, simply because I don't know what was said in that consultation. It is some time ago. I know that in more recent discussions that we've had, we've spoken about existing footpath infrastructure that could be impacted by this as well, and what the complexion of that would be with the final routing of that pipeline would look like. We'll have to do some digging and come back to you on what was said about any further footpaths for Port Huon.
Thank you. I would just like to say that the meeting that you're referring to, I think, happened quite a while ago. We've had a meeting with Taswater, but there was no discussion at that meeting that we were at on where it was going to go or anything like to that effect. I know that they've had a meeting with the Port Huon Progress Association, which we didn't know they were having either. So we have made contact for us to be brought up to speed on what's happening there as well. Yeah. Yes, Mr. Jessup, you have another question.
Just a quick one. In relation to that outflow, I've certainly been talking to the Port Huon Association people. They're very concerned that ultra-chlorinated water or hyperchlorinated water will be outletted into what is a recreation area, which is an enclosed bay. The question that was posed to me was wondering why it wasn't sent out via Whale Point to a more open water area. So the question is, I suppose, has Council been consulted about the best outlet for what is ultimately very chlorinated water with chunky bits probably floating in it as well?
We've had.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jessup. We have requested another meeting with Taswater. The Yacht Club also brought it up in a meeting that we had this last week with them as well. So, and Michael was at that meeting and we talked about it. So it is on our radar. Thank you. So no other questions from the gallery? Okay. So we move on to item number 9. And I declare an interest in that, and I'll pass that to you. You? Yep.
This puts us in a circumstance whereby we do not have a quorum. So under Regulation 11 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulations, a quorum is an absolute majority of the council, which is 5. So if you were to declare an interest, you have declared an interest, so leaving the meeting and the next 2 agenda items would leave the council without a quorum. Sub-regulation 6 of Regulation 11 provides if at any time during the meeting the required quorum is no longer present, the chair is to adjourn the meeting until the quorum is present or until a later date, unless the quorum is likely to be present for the next item of business. In these circumstances, we have the regulations aren't necessarily helpful. We have 2 items of business which are essentially the same business, given that the first part of both petitions is exactly the same. In the circumstances, if you were to move a procedural motion that combines those items, that would allow the meeting to continue. The petition items would not be able to be dealt with at this meeting and would lay on the table until such time as there is a quorum able to do that, which would likely be the November meeting of the council. So that will allow you to proceed, otherwise there will be a requirement for adjournment of the meeting.
Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to move a procedural motion that the agenda item 9.009/22 and 9.010/22 be considered together as one agenda item.
Okay. Do we have a seconder? Yes, we do. Councillor Prince. Okay, so we'll put that motion as a procedural motion. All those in favour? That's all present, and the motion is carried.
Just before you proceed, Acting Mayor, so being unable to deal with that item, there were 2 questions that were asked in public question time, which you did undertake to discuss in relation to the petitions.
Yep.
Whether you wish to take a moment to consider a response to those questions now,
right,
or something that you will come back to at a later time in the meeting and provide a response perhaps at the next council meeting.
Yeah, next council meeting. Thank you. Okay, we now move on to the last of the petitions, 9.011/22. Say no to compulsory landscape conservation zoning on private land in the Huon Valley. I refer the councillors to the recommendations of this report. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Yes, Councillor Clark. Do I have a seconder? Councillor O'May. Councillor Clark, do you wish to speak to this motion?
I do thank the petitioners for putting this forward, but I do believe that council, we've talked about it and are acting on this, but I will ask that can the director, through you, Acting Chair, can the director explain the purpose of Section 35F report and how it will address these public concerns? I understand you have actually spoken about this briefly. Would you like to elaborate on that? Thank you.
Through you,
Yes. The Acting Director.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Clark. So the purpose of the Section 35 report, 35F report, I should say, sorry, is to consider and respond to the merits of each individual representation that we receive, and ultimately recommend from that if a change is required to the draft LPS, a draft being a change of zone for that particular property. There's specific requirements for the report set out in Section 35F of LUPA, but given the significant public interest on this, we'll go beyond the legislative requirement, and we've already said that in providing a, well, it's in the recommendation here, but that a summary, so a contextual summary which broadly talks to the issues that we've heard from the community, which cross a range of things, not just related to landscape conservation, but just broadly to how this thing has rolled out. And that'll also allow us to expand on the submission we've already made to the state planning provisions, which are related here. So it's a useful thing for us to do, and it is beyond the regulatory requirement. We said in the report that that there is no basis for us to just reject out of the LCZ, that it doesn't apply. It is a zone as part of the guidelines, and with the information available to us, we've applied those guidelines in good faith. ultimately, it's an individual test of every single rep in that Section 35 report. So it will set out the representation, our response to it, what those merits are, and that will test the appropriateness of the application of that zone to that particular land. It is about particular land, not a broad brush. This zone does not apply down here. So I think, as I shared earlier to one of the questioners, we're advanced in developing the Section 35F report now because it's due soon, and I can share that there are a number where the evidence that's been provided through the representation process has meant that we think there's sufficient merit to change that zoning, and so we'll be making that application through. Ultimately, we're not the arbiters of that. That's what the hearings are for, so it'll rest with the Tasmanian Planning Commission. But I guess it's evidence that the process does work. We look at these things, we take the merit that's available. That's a continually evolving piece. And the only other thing I'd say about it is that the Section 35 report isn't the last crack at this. So whilst it provided representations were allowed to provide evidence for us to assess merit and potentially change our recommendation of zoning, representatives can also gather and present more evidence in the hearings themselves, so directly to the Tasmanian Planning Commission. So I would encourage anyone that that scrambled to get a submission in with the time allowed to continue to do that. But just a reminder, it does need to be merit-based and supported by suitably qualified advice. Hope that answers your question.
Clarify it a bit more. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Is there any councillors speak against the motion? No? Would you have a question? Councillor O'May?
Yes, Mayor. On just this whole question in regards to this planning scheme changes is, in my view, confusing and predatory as far as private landowners are concerned. I've had to adhere to to forest practices plans through my tenure of my property, and it has a very good reserve system under the...
Councillor O'May, is your question about the actual petition, what they've got going? Because that's what we're voting on here. It's a recommendation to say no to compulsory landscape. So I'm just wondering whether that's I'm getting there.
In agreeance with that.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So
all right.
I'm just trying to give some background on why I am in agreement with this petition. So I just personally believe that that I have a very good reserve system on my property as it is, and to then overlap that with another one is unfair and duplicating a system that's has been working quite well for some time. So I'm in full support of this this petition. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right. So the recommendation then we're voting on. So the recommendation is either A, the report on the petition to stop the use of landscape conservation zone on private land be received and noted, and B is, having considered the petition to stop the use of landscape conservation zone on private land, the council notes that the LPS process continues as described in the legislation, and council will include a summary of public concerns with the landscape conservation zone as part of our Section 35F report to the Commissioner. So that's a recommendation. Okay, all right. So, is there any other questions? Councillor Clark, have you got a closing?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Yes, I understand it's very contentious, and I do feel for a lot of people in the community about this. But as we have to trust the process, and we have to trust our experts in this council that will try and do their best. They understand what's happened. We'll just have to trust that they can put their best foot forward with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Okay, so I will put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all, and the motion is carried. Okay, I hand over to the Director of Legal and Governance to table a petition, the petitions lodged on the 29th.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. So we have received 2 petitions to be tabled tonight. The first petition was lodged on 29th of August 2022 as follows: a petition regarding the Huon Valley Council providing a public statement accepting responsibility for the flawed recruitment process for the General Manager in 2021 and breaches of the Code of Conduct, and apologising to the Huon Valley community. The Auditor General described the recruitment process for the General Manager of the Huon Valley Council as flawed because of the serious conflict of interest due to the relationship between the recruitment agent and the candidates who was appointed. A flaw is defined as having or characterised by a fundamental weakness or imperfection in the Macquarie Dictionary. Councillors have received training in how to respond to conflicts of interest, and the council is requested to demonstrate accountability by publicly accepting responsibility for continuing the recruitment process despite knowing of a serious conflict of interest, publicly acknowledging breaches of the Council's Code of Conduct by Councillors Doyle and Newell that brought the Council into disrepute, publicly apologising to the Huon Valley community for the consequences of the flawed process. The petition is stated to contain 160 signatories and complies with the requirements of Section 57(2) of the Local Government Act 1993. There's a simple recommendation for receiving the petition, that the petition regarding the Huon Valley Council providing a public statement accepting responsibility for the flawed recruitment process for the General Manager in 2021 and breaches of the Code of Conduct and apologising to the Huon Valley community be received.
Okay, I refer the councillors to the recommendation. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Councillor Prince, do I have a seconder? Councillor Clark. There's no discussion, it's only receiving the petition. So those in favour? Please raise your hand. That's all, council, and the motion is carried. I pass back to you again.
The second petition, Acting Mayor, also lodged on 29th of August 2022, petition to allow ratepayers to attend council workshops. So the Huon Valley Council, we the undersigned, request that the Huon Valley Council allow access by ratepayers to those parts of HVC workshops that do not contain privileged information. Ratepayers pay for these workshops. Not all councillors attend these workshops. Experts hold informative talks on subjects that many residents would find interesting. An open council should welcome and encourage interested residents to attend. In the spirit of open governance, we request to be allowed to attend these workshops. The petition contains 189 signatories and complies with the requirements of Section 57(2) of the Local Government Act 1993. There is a recommendation, Acting Mayor, which is for receipt of the petition, that the petition to allow ratepayers to attend council workshops be received.
Okay, councillors, I refer you to the recommendation. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Councillor Prince, do I have a seconder? Councillor Lovell, no discussion, so can I please have all hands voting for the motion? That's all councillors and the motion is passed. So, the Mayor, I advise that the Council is now acting as a planning authority at 6:44. In accordance with the provisions of Part 2, Regulation 25 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures, Regulations 2015, the Council will now act as a planning authority pursuant to the Land Use and Planning and Approvals Act of 1993. In accordance with Regulation 25, the Council will act as a planning authority in respect to these matters appearing under item 17 on this agenda, inclusive of any supplementary items. Agenda item number 10.008/22, planning application for a change of use to Franklin accommodation at 8 New Road, Franklin. CT-142770/1 VA 7/2022. I refer the councillors to the recommendation for this on this report. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Councillor Clark. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Prince. Councillor Clark, would you like to speak for this motion?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I know I've read the application for the permit and I see no reason to reject it. I think they've addressed the issues of the parking and the lighting that have been referred to. So I'm happy to approve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any councillors speak against the motion? Are there any questions from any of the remaining councillors? Yes, Councillor Lovell.
I just have one. When something's turned into visitor accommodation, does that mean that's that for life? So as long as that person owns that property, is that how that works, or is there a certain amount of time or?
Okay, I'll pass that through the Director of Legal and Governance.
I'll take this one, Acting Mayor. What is being granted is a permit, a permission. So it does not direct that that person has to act upon the permit. Once they commence, they can stop at any time. So they are not continuously bound to operate that as a visitor accommodation into the future.
I guess what I'm saying is, if that property ever sold, does that permit go with?
Yes, the permit goes with the property.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Councillor Clark, have you got any closing? Thank you. Okay, so I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors present, and the motion is carried. Okay. Okay, agenda item number 10.009/22. Section 43A, application under former provisions of Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993. 4A, draft amendment PSA/1/2022 to be initiated to amend the Huon Valley Interim Planning Scheme 2015 under former section 34(1)A of the Act to rezone land at 388 Scotts Road, Cairns Bay, CT 165935/2, property from significant agriculture to rural resource. B, the draft amendment to be certified under former section 35(2) of the Act. C, a draft planning permit DA 14/2022 to be issued under former section 43C1 of the Act for a partial change of use of the property to resource development for a marine farming shore facility development on part of the property. And D, works associated with the marine farming shore facility development to be carried out on part of the property. The title reference is PSA 1/2022 and DA 14/2022. I refer councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Councillor Lovell. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Clark. Councillor Lovell, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I guess just that I know that this has been in the works for a long time, and I feel that there was a couple of things the owner had, I guess when he put forward this, that there were some stumbling blocks that didn't allow what he wanted to do. and to me it seemed quite unfair. But obviously, working through it all, they've come out with what, I guess, the solution that needed to happen. And I'm really happy that, they continue to work through it. Yeah, thank you.
Is there any councillor to speak against the motion? No? Is there any other questions? Yes, Councillor O'May?
Sorry, Mayor, I'm not sure if it's more of a question or a statement or both, but as you've already underlined, the application here is in regards to a partial use of the property for this endeavour, and the rest of the property will still be used as an agricultural enterprise, I guess. So I see that it's quite fitting with the landscape and all the industry that's in that area, and there is a bit of a drainage. Creek goes down that side of the road down there, but this sort of a procedure doesn't involve anything that's going to be a major problem there. So I think it's a great idea, and it's another avenue for employment and progress in the valley. So I think it just goes to show that you can use agricultural land and industry together, and they are compatible. So in some instances, so I think it's a great proposal. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. I just would also like to say this has been something that's been in the wings for 2 years or more, and I know that there has been a lot of work done on this. They have a lot of conditions that are there for them to be able to meet this, to be able to come back and have it advertised and go from there. So I think that with that in mind, I think most of the things, as Councillor Lovell has said, have been crossed off, that they'll have to come back with all their things, all their ducks in a row. So good on them for hanging in there and working with our department. And I'd like to thank Michael, that's sitting over there next to the director, for all the work that's gone into this proposal, because there's 380 pages in the attachments, so it is very, a lot of work's gone into that, so thank you, Michael, and I'm sure they appreciate it too. So, can I have, Councillor Lovell, have you got any closing? No? Okay, so all those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all, councillors, and the motion is carried. Oh, now I've lost my spot. Okay. I advise that the council is no longer acting as a planning authority at... 53. Thank you. Okay, so item number 11, general reports. We have the General Manager's operational report, the Acting Mayor Doyle's activities, 21-22 annual plan implementation report, the draft unconfirmed audit panel meeting minutes of 11 August 22, Chieftain Town Hall Controlling Authority strategy plan, business plan, 2022-23 and budget 22-23, and the Taswater quarterly report. Committee minutes have been checked by the committee chair and have been distributed to the committee members. Minutes remain as a draft unconfirmed until the following meeting. Do we have any councillors to table their activities? No? Okay. 11.008/22, I refer the councillors to the recommendation. Do I have a councillor to move a motion that the reports general reports and minutes for the period 1 to the 31st of July 2022 be received and noted. Councillor Clark, do I have a seconder? Councillor O'May. Councillor Clark, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, Mayor.
Thank you. Do I have a councillor speak against? No. Are there any questions? No. Oh, sorry, Councillor Prince.
More of a statement. Just like to thank the General Manager for continuing to indulge me in our regular catch-ups. Thank you.
Thank you. As there is no councillors to speak against the motion, I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors present, and the motion is carried. 12 council workshops. Director of Legal and Governance, would you wish to speak to these workshops?
I'll just read out what as it's presented in the agenda, Acting Mayor. So on 10 August, there was a youth presentation where the Youth Development Officer stepped the councillors through the process taken in transitioning from the Huon Valley Youth Services to 12 to 24 Huon Valley Youth. Items discussed included the new way of engaging, supporting and working alongside youth in the Huon Valley, current projects being worked on by the Youth Working Group, co-design programs supporting the Huon Valley youth and some of the outcomes already achieved. Also discussed at that workshop was a food hub update. An update was provided on the Huon Valley Food Hub project, including a brief summary of the research and development engagement activities conducted during the early stages of the project and how this work has informed the selection of 4 trial projects that will be delivered over coming months. That's the workshop itself.
Thank you. Okay, 13.1, questions taken on notice. There was nil. 13.2, do any councillors wish to ask a question? Councillor O'May.
I've got a couple of questions, Mayor. Thank you. Firstly, one is a question in regards to our sporting facilities at Huonville. We've had issues, major issues for quite some time with our football ground. We've had to have the fire truck in to pump it out on numerous occasions because it's a lake. The drainage is blocked up. It used to have good drainage. I played on this ground many years ago, unfortunately. But we never had the issues that we've got there now. It's flooding on the northern end of the ground quite badly. And there's also a lot of really good volunteers wanting to put some time and effort into revamping the facilities there, but they're unable due to planning issues. And also the fact that it's going to be a costly exercise to fix a lot of the issues. My question is, can Council, as a priority, put some form of delegation to go to our state government to have some assistance forthcoming to be able to meet the requirements? There's been a major upgrade of the Sorrel sporting facilities. There's been a major upgrade of the Brighton facilities. We are really coming a very good last in regards to improving our recreational ground at Huonville. If you go to the football club there, I mean, it's our social responsibility as a council to look after our youth, to walk into the club rooms and see the youth that's there involved in this game, as well as the cricket sides, the soccer sides, and the athletics that are over there. If we want to be leaders in our community, get kids off the streets and give them something to do, we really should be making this a priority as my term on this council to get something done about it. I've asked the question a few times over the last 6 months or so. We've had meetings, but I don't really seem to get any real direction or action in regards to this. I know funding's tight and we've had adverse weather issues and whatnot, but I really would like to see some action in regards to this. I really don't know what else I can say in regards to pushing this as a priority, other than the fact that we all should get behind it. And at the end of the day, it's our kids are our future, and if we're not providing a good facility for them, then it will reflect back on us and the community. And also the fact that it's beside the high school. As far as education goes, it's an important part of education. I mean, you see the endeavour and the rewards that have been reaped in the valley from clubs and the success. We've just had the Signet Girls winning grand final, great achievement. And another 2 finals to be played this week. That was up in the air whether they could be played at Yonville because the ground was just such a mud pile, but fortunately we've had 3 or 4 good days of weather which has dried it out a little bit, so looking forward to some good games there on Saturday. Hopefully Yonville's victorious in one of the games we're in, prelims, so but at the end of the day,
So,
on the same token, I hope Signet is successful as well. So, yeah, so
That's a
I
bit
just
hard.
really think we should get behind this as a council and get it up there.
okay. I'll have to take that on notice because it's quite a big, broad question there. There has been a meeting on the Yonville Rec group, and it got all the people in together on that committee. So we'll come back to you with an answer. We have got multiple ovals, remember, in our area. So, you know, we have to be able to, this is a whole community discussion about, you know, spending money in one area. So, but anyway, we'll take it on notice and, yeah, we'll come back to you if that's all right.
If I may quote though, Mayor, I understand what you're saying. Out of the multiple ovals you're referring to, Yonville's the only one that disappears underwater. So I just think it's a bit of a priority, and the fact that it's beside the school, it is really an issue that we should be looking at.
Can I please just reiterate that? I understand where you're coming from, Mark, and I wondered whether the group that got together actually considered putting in for major grants, because I think they'll be out again. I don't know whether they're even out again now, but you can get up to 150,000 or more. Whereas council probably can't put in for them, but those
we have though,
football clubs and whatever maybe could put in for them.
Yep, you can, yes.
So we had a meeting for the rec ground. That's about 13 stakeholders involved in that whole area, so not just the ground but that whole recreation area. We weren't able to have meetings, it had been about 1.5, 2 years I think because of COVID, to get everybody together again. But it's just sort of becoming more evident that there's a lot more unity between the groups to actually get something happening there. For council to try and fund something is very difficult, as we know, but we were successful in getting the Levelling the Playing Field grant to help with those change rooms. I think it's going to be more of a thing of all those clubs coming together and putting their case forward, just like Signet have done with their lights. They got a lot of community support, raising money as well as the government involved. But it sort of hasn't been up until this time that all the stakeholders have been willing to come together, I think, and really be, I guess, involved in wanting the outcome for that area with everybody involved, because there is so many people involved in that, even Taswater and all sorts involved in it. So there it involves a lot of money because there's lighting and all sorts that's got to be changed. And like I said, Taswater as well. So there's quite a few stakeholders. So
Yeah.
hopefully there'll be another meeting. I don't think there'll be another meeting before elections, obviously.
Yeah.
But hopefully in the next one we can see actually some traction. And I think because there was a site plan done as well for the area.
Yeah, so they have done a site plan through that, Kep.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, my suggestion there is more in reference to we petition our state members to get down here and address the situation. It's way out of council's budget, but I believe that we really should be making it as a priority for our sitting members of the state government. If they're talking about spending $1 billion on an AFL venue in Hobart, we're not talking about anywhere near that amount of money. We're talking about just grassroots sporting facilities for our youth and our clubs. And I really think that the state government should be taking more of an interest in this area. And
Yep.
what I'm suggesting is council try and lobby for those guys to get down here.
Yeah. Is your microphone on? It is now.
It is now. Sorry.
That's okay. Take that on notice, as we say, we'll come back to you at the next meeting, but you can be rest assured that every meeting that I've had with the ministers in that area, our sporting facilities have been brought up. But I take it on notice and we'll come back to you on that one. You said you had two. That was number
Mayor,
one.
if I may, my second question. Being a resident in Judbury, we have a large increase in trucks on our road going to the wood plant.
Yep.
I'm not sure what's going on there, but it was told to explain to us when the plant was first built that no produce from that plant would be going our direction, it would be going back through Geefton. I'm not sure whether things have changed or what. But at the end of the day, I have conversed with quite a few local truck drivers, and they are disenchanted with the fact that they work all week and then have to work all weekend putting their truck back together. Because of the bad weather that we've been having, I imagine, that, and as we all know, the roads are in disrepair all over the place, and council can only have so many people to attend issues. But my question is if there's going to be extra traffic on this road, can we please have a bit more maintenance? I've had continuous complaints to me because the road has got such big bumps and lumps in it that it rattles the trucks and people just can't sleep through the night. So that, along with the fact that the repairs to the trucks and the local residents' vehicles is unacceptable, I just think that we should be addressing the situation a little bit more acutely than what has been happening of late, Mayor.
Thank you. I won't expect too much to come from the director on that one, so we might come back to you on that. You ought to remember that, you know, like we have Narrows Road at Dover that has this same issue as well. Yeah, but a lot of industry using roads. So do you want it to go to the director? Yep, okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for the question. Look, it's the maintenance at the moment after these latest rains is significant, and it is well beyond council's means to deal with it. That's why we've just got just about every civil contractor in the valley currently working on our roads for us to support us, and that's still not enough. So there are months of maintenance work ahead of us to get back to where we were. I think believe it or not, I'm getting plenty of comments that a lot of our infrastructure held up really bloody well.
Yeah.
Certainly road pavement has held up really, really well in a lot of cases, and it's no surprise it's where there's been drains formed and work done over last summer. And then there's plenty of areas where nothing was going to cope with that, or we've got a pavement that's held up well and then drains completely scoured out because the water's telling us that despite our best endeavours, we get an event like that, and everything we've got maintained as best as we possibly can is still not enough. The capacity was just simply exceeded, and we had a definitional flash flooding event. So this is an extreme event. It has extreme consequences and it has a long tail to catch up with maintenance. But many of these meetings we've been here talking about the state of North Huon Road, Lonavale Road, etc., that are getting hit by huge numbers of vehicles. Log trucks, residents, as well as visitors to the area, and they are a problem, and they're part of what we're trying to address with a maintenance program. That maintenance program is, in fact, in tatters at the moment as we try to catch up with after this latest storm. We're on the cusp of actually presenting what our program would look like and the allocation of getting around routinely, and that was working really well. Our roads were in pretty good condition and on the improve. So yeah, it's pretty demoralising to be honest. But whether we've got capacity to get out and be grading North Huon Road, Lonavale Road, etc., more often, we spend weeks grading those roads when we're there, and in some cases they hold up for a matter of weeks, despite our best endeavours. They need reconstruction. They need significant work on them. It's beyond just maintain. And the current maintenance works that we do at the moment is simply providing a business case for, we could maintain this at X frequency, it's going to cost us this much, versus significant capital upgrades to get those roads into a better state. But the simple answer is, in the short term, I don't have a grader sitting on standby at the end of North Huon Road, and I can't see one becoming available to do that anytime soon. And that's the issue that we've got with that kind of heavy vehicle and that kind of volume on roads, where we really don't know what's underneath those roads, and they fall apart.
So, thank you, Director, for that. Yeah. Yes.
Sorry, Mayor. Has there been any thought into whether we can hire in an extra grader or something to try and catch up on this work in a time of
Yeah.
need?
We already had an extra grader on the ground before that storm came into place, and that was part of the increased funding that we had into roads maintenance. It's part of the reason why roads generally were a lot better, and I base that on where our public comments, etc., were versus this time last year, leading up to that weather event. So we've always said that it's going to take it's a big, it's a significant ship to turn around, because there is a hell of a lot of reconstruction work required. But we were tracking better. We did have a third grader that we'd hired in, and that's part of a training and skills improvement piece within our team as well, to increase the number of machine operators we've got. So yeah, we're throwing and have been throwing everything at it within our budgetary constraints. We're trying different things. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mayor, I do have another question, if I'm permitted, and that is in regards to the storm event and questions that have come before me in regards to the drainage in Huonville and the capacity of our drains to be able to cope with such events and the potential of regularity of these events. The Russell Valley's been wiped out twice in 2 months. This doesn't seem to be, quote, the 1 in 100 year event that everybody's been palming it off to be for quite some time. And as we've seen on the whole east coast of Australia, it's becoming potentially a norm. My question is this type of event going to be factored into our planning, future planning for the town and low-lying areas, and specifically our drainage, whether our drainage is acceptable or has to be improved, or future developments, whether the drainage has to be increased, the standard has to be increased as opposed to what it is now. We've had homes inundated, we've had a lot of people really put out by this event, so I really think that as the peers of the community, we really should be looking at the future and what the impacts potentially could be, because this issue could get worse, not better. So,
Thank you. Would you like that to come through? Yep, through you, Director.
Yep. And yeah, thanks for someone asking the question about the recent floods. So, yeah, look, it's a serious issue, and I guess there's elements that are already underway to address this. So, to this council's credit, you know, we put before them a request to fund some strategic planning work, so the land use and development strategy. We're making the appointment at the moment for the consultant to progress that, and infrastructure is a big part of that, so that this council can actually be directive around what infrastructure should be in place particularly for future developments. What we've got in place for existing infrastructure is we know that much of it is undersized, much of it was never engineered in the first instance. Most of our pipes, most of our roads, pipes are undersized. There's mostly 225s. Millimetre diameter, culverts across roads. They've been installed incorrectly or suboptimal locations, and roads haven't been actually founded on anything in many cases. They're farm tracks that have been formalised over time. So, yeah, I don't think this is a particularly outlandish event, what we saw. We certainly saw pretty unprecedented flash flooding, and we're trying to explore what that means with the bomb, and particularly why we had no warning from an easterly system like that. But that quantity of rainfall and this kind of damage is something that I think a prudent council is preparing for, and we're certainly trying to, again, within our constraints. This is also the kind of stuff that in the budget for this year we tried to put provision forward, the $200,000 for effectively seed funding to do this kind of exploration work. We have a stormwater management plan that council's had for a number of years that identifies problem areas. No surprises that most of those problem areas were ones that got impacted with flooding. Some of those problem areas, like the back of Huonville, has been responded to, and some unfortunate events led to that system that investment had been made into being defeated and ultimately flooding. But there's other areas that are on that stormwater management plan. As I said, it's been in place for years, and the recommendations in that are more investment is required into specific detail, specific engineered advice on how we upgrade that existing infrastructure. And we haven't invested in it. So it's sitting out there. We're currently, again, within our budget constraints, looking into those areas, and never waste a good crisis, because an event like that galvanises everyone, and stormwater has a habit of being the last thing anyone worries about until you get flooding. And I think that's certainly what we're seeing at the moment. It's something that the infrastructure department is very well aware of. They were certainly aware of it before I arrived, and we're trying to make a big effort into addressing this as we go forward. Last thing I'll say on this, sorry my answers are long-winded, but these are topics I do want to be talking about. So there's, among a lot of the issues that we saw the other weekend, there were 8 key areas that saw significant flooding, and we're finalising our analysis on those at the moment. We'll do some more consultation with the SES and the Bureau of Meteorology, and ultimately we'll be having some public information, or a public information session that we'll record and share with the community, so that we can just have an open, honest conversation about what actually did happen. There's a lot of conjecture out there. We haven't said much about it at this point because we've been focusing on fixing the damage and analysing, so we don't say the wrong thing. But we'll have an open forum with the community so they can participate, ask questions, etc., and understand 2 key things really: why did it happen, and what can we do to prevent it happening again? And that what can we do to prevent it happening again is exactly what you're talking about. We need to make investments in undersized stormwater capacity. It's as simple as that. It's not going to all happen overnight. We need to prioritise and start rolling this out.
Yes. Through you, Mayor.
I'm sorry, Mayor, to persist on this subject, but in my eyes it's extremely important and very important to people that are living in low-lying areas in the Huon Valley, which are quite a few.
Yep.
One thing that, in my view, hasn't been addressed, and it's only a matter of time, it's a matter of if, when, not if, and that is my observations. I did a lot of driving around when the flood was on. the Mountain River, the willow tree issue in Mountain River is so prolific. It is my belief that it's only a matter of time that all these things are going to, in a flood event like we've just had, dam up against one of the bridges and create a beaver's nest, which is going to create a much bigger flooding event. I believe that as a council we should be trying to approach some funding from NRM or other state body representatives to address this willow tree issue. They're narrowing up the river, they're not letting the river breathe and the water to get away. It's way, way too big for us to be looking at, but I believe that we should be well and truly involved in facilitating the removal or control of a lot of this crack willow infestations, specifically in the Mountain River, which is the one that I looked at. And I guess I know there was a big effort at Geefton here a few years ago. A guy won a NRM award for his endeavours.
That's a long time ago, but yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just believe that that I think we really should be putting that as one of our priorities as well in regards to this flooding.
Yep.
So,
Thank you. I'm pretty sure that all these things that you've mentioned are things that have been put forward for this public meeting once we find some information. So, thank you. I did have Councillor Prince before. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. And through you, Acting Mayor, does council have a policy on driveway culverts?
Do you want to do that? Yes, okay. Through you, Director, to you.
No, we don't have a policy on them.
I suppose a natural follow-on for that. Does council need to potentially review or look at whether a policy is required for driveway culverts?
I think it's a wider a policy on stormwater.
Yeah.
And driveway crossovers and culverts would be part of that.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Clark, did you have anything?
I was just going to agree with Mark regarding the infrastructure, but also we've spoken about this, the infrastructure in Huonville especially. Taswater has a lot to answer for their dated sewerage infrastructure, and when that gets into the stormwater on these flooding events, so that Taswater need to be involved in this as well, and I know you're going to bring that up. I just thought I'd mention it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, no other questions? Thank you for that, guys. Thanks for that. Councillors, notice of motion. Do we have any? No? Nope. Okay. Thank you.
sorry, what was that, Mayor? Do we have a motion?
Councillors, notice of motions. Do you have?
Okay, sorry.
No. Okay. Agenda number 15.023/22, General Review of the Delegated Authority. I refer the councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Councillor Lovell, a seconder. Councillor Prince. Councillor Lovell, do you wish to speak to this motion?
Just a couple of comments through you, Acting Mayor. Thank you to the Director for, I guess, working with the GM and the exec team to find some, I think it's going to look like quite a few efficiencies out of this. So I just wanted to note that. Yeah, I think it's really good. Thank you.
No problems. Do I have a councillor to speak against the motion? No? Are there any other questions? No? Councillor Lovell, you wish to close? Okay. As there's no councillors speak against the motion, then I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors present and the motion is carried. 15.024/22, Taswater Owners Representative Group, Proxy Representation Appointment. I'll refer the councillors to the recommendation. And that, as you can see, yeah. Okay, so Councillor Clark, do I have a seconder? Councillor Lovell? Councillor Clark, do you wish to speak to this motion? Okay. Is there any councillors to speak against the motion? I would just like to say that that's the main thing, is that there will be no one to, at the first meeting, is that correct, that we need to do this to be able to allow to the General Manager to vote?
So,
Yeah.
Acting Mayor, this is basically a catch-all to ensure that we do have somebody attending at the meeting.
Yeah.
The ideal is that the Mayor will be elected and available at that point in time, or in their absence, the Deputy Mayor. This is just ensuring that the meeting can still go ahead and we'll have a quorum.
Yep. Lovely, thank you. Okay, as there's no councillors to speak against the motion, Councillor Clark, do you wish to speak?
No, Mayor.
No. Okay, so as there's no councillors to speak against the motion, then I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all present, and the motion is carried. Agenda item 15.025/22, Local Government Association in Tasmania, General Meeting Motions. Okay. Okay, so do I have a... Okay. So I'll refer the councillors to the recommendation of this report. Is that correct? Yep. Councillor Prince, do I have a seconder? Councillor O'May. Councillor Prince, do you wish... Okay. Do I have a councillor to speak against the motion? No? Any other questions on that? No? Okay. As there's no councillor to speak against the motion, then I put it forward. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all present, and the motion is carried. Future of Local Government Review, 15.026/22. I refer councillors to the recommendation to this report. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Councillor Clark. Do I have a seconder? Oh, Councillor O'May. Councillor Clark, do you wish to speak to this?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Yes, I do want to speak on this briefly. I did take the time and did a speed reading of this document. It was very heavy reading, but the thing I took out of it that was a bit concerning to me was that they did suggest that the role reflect a shift from infrastructure provision over to towards wellbeing and resilience. And what worried me, if that's the case, who is going to pay for that? I mean, who are going to pay for those services? It's obviously the state government or the federal government will have to, put funds towards that. So I just think that's very concerning, and I did reflect that to Director of Legal and Governance, and he, as I understand it, has put that in his references to the report and raised that issue. So that's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
I can just add to that, Acting Mayor, there's certainly, this relates to the first part of the submission in relation to the proposed role statement. There's a lot of uncertainty in relation to what is actually being put forward. Some suggestions of having regional bodies to provide various services might be a good idea, but there's no detail associated with it, how they're funded, how councils have influence on them, and if council really wants to be delivering for the health and wellbeing and resilience for its community, if it doesn't have influence over a lot of infrastructure, there's a massive disconnect. So certainly the submission raises that as an issue.
Thank you for that, Director. Okay. Do I have anyone to speak against the motion? Is there any other questions?
I might just through you, just say absolutely agree, Sue. It's really easy, it seems, in that report. You're absolutely right. We discussed this in audit panel that there's a lot of information and terminology in there, and then what comes out of it, I was a little bit blown away with that. All of a sudden, it's going to be more health and wellbeing focused when we're already struggling to fund that kind of thing. You know, most of ours comes through grants, which we know is very hard to sustain through council. So, absolutely agree, Sue.
Well, thank you for bringing that up, Sue. So, is there any other questions? No? That's, all right. So, as there's no councillor speak against the motion, then I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all present. The motion is carried. What's that next one? Agenda item 16.011/22, the financial report. I refer the councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Councillor O'May, seconder. Councillor Clark. Councillor O'May, do you have any wish to speak on this motion?
The only comment I'd like to make, Mayor, is that this deficit is reduced as much as we possibly can in the future. I imagine our director's got everything under control there. He's running pretty good things, so I think we really got to work hard, and as much as I've just been underlying issues that need to be addressed, at the same time we've
Got to turn your mic on, please, Councillor New. Councillor New,
Sorry,
Councillor
Mayor.
O'May.
So as much as I've just been saying that there's a lot of issues that have got to be addressed, we've got to be well aware of the amount of money that we are spending and how much we've got to spend.
Yeah.
So on my preceding comments, I believe a lot of what I've suggested are planning issues as opposed to expenditure, and also the fact that to try and get some more grant money in from different areas of local government, i.e. NRM or our sporting facilities upgrades from funding from different government organisations, as opposed to, and us facilitating it, as opposed to trying to bankroll it, which is just not in our capacity. So it's pretty scary, a deficit there, but I think what I've seen with the plan that that will be taken care of in the next few years. So that's all I've got to say. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Clark.
I'd just like to speak on this and congratulate the Director for his report. But I do have a couple of questions. First one, you've mentioned here about the interest on investments, etc. Were budgeted for 100,000, and obviously because it was lower interest rates, but now those interest rates are increasing, and there's some quite good products out there. And I'll mention again, and I've mentioned before, Macquarie Bank have a 2.75% for 6 months. And obviously you're up to date with these things too, and I understand you'll be looking at that, but I just think we need to make every effort to earn as much as we can on those investments. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Director, would you like to? Thank you.
Thank you. Certainly happy to respond to that. Quite right, interest rates are rising, and so what we'll do is at the end of the September quarter we'll make an update to the forecast there, and I think you can reasonably expect to see that budget line item increase. The 2.75 you just mentioned, we're doing better than that already. So we actually placed some money today at it was about 3 1/4. So that just demonstrates that the interest rates are rising. We're getting sort of quite good rates at the moment, sort of around that 4, 5, 6 month time frame. But we're just also trying to balance that by not placing money out too far in the knowledge that interest rates are rising. So it's just that sort of juggling act. So we're not trying to place them too far out because we know rates are going to rise again. So, but certainly we're doing better.
You'll be well up with it. Thank you.
Okay. So, let me go back to that. Do I have any councillors speak against the motion? No. Are there any other questions? No? No? Okay. As there's no councillors speak against the motion, then I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Proposal for place name, Billy Falls, 16.012/22. I refer the councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Councillor Lovell, seconder Councillor Prince. Councillor Lovell, would you like to speak to? No comments. Thank you. Is there any other questions or no? No one to speak against? You want to close, Councillor Lovell? No? Okay, so all those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Congratulations, Billy Falls. 17.011/22, update environmental health plan for Huon Valley Council. I refer the councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Councillor Lovell. Do I have a seconder? Councillor O'May. Councillor Lovell, do you wish to speak on this report? Okay. Is there any councillor to speak against? No? Any other questions or statements? No? Do you want to close, Councillor Lovell? Okay. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. The annual food safety report, July 2021 to June 2022. Agenda item number 17.012/22. I refer councillors to the recommendation. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Councillor O'May. A seconder? Councillor Clark. Councillor O'May, do you wish to speak for this?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Is there any councillor speak against? No. So is there any other questions on this item number? No. Okay. Do you wish to close? Any closing?
Yes, Mayor, there's no further comment from me.
Okay,
it's all
thank
pretty
you.
straightforward, I think.
Thank you. As there's no other councillor speak against the motion, then I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Okay. Agenda item 17.013/22. The annual recreational water quality report, July 2021 to June 2022. I refer the councillors to the recommendation. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Yes, Councillor O'May. A seconder? Councillor Clark. Do you wish to speak, Councillor O'May?
Yes, Mayor, I generally support this recommendation, but on earlier comments in regards to Port Ewan, should we be putting that in as a
I reckon it'd be
dot point somewhere on this this recommendation? I mean, to say that everything's potentially hunky-dory when maybe there's an issue there, I don't really know. I'm just putting it up there for a
okay. Thank you. Okay, can I pass?
Question topic, that's all.
Through you, Acting Mayor, this is a report on the annual recreational water quality testing that has been done over the previous 12 months. Port Ewan is not a site that has been the subject for any testing in accordance with the public health guidelines. Certainly any reference to Port Ewan and potential outfall is something for future consideration. Unlikely to be recreational swimming under these public health guidelines, may be a broader environmental NRM related water quality process, but it's certainly something that does not relate in any way to this report.
Okay,
Thank you, Mayor. I just thought I should flag it due to the earlier comments.
thank you. Okay, do I have a councillor to speak against the motion? Are there any other questions? No? As there's no councillor to speak against the motion, then I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Agenda number 19.010/22, review and development of a future aquatics facilities strategy report. I refer the councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Councillor Lovell, and a seconder? Councillor Prince. Councillor Lovell, would you like to speak to this motion?
No, thank you.
Okay. Is there a councillor to speak against the motion? No? Is there any questions or? Nope. Okay. I have none. As there's no councillor to speak against the motion, then I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Okay, agenda item number 19.011/22, a Ewan Valley Council Medical Services update. I refer the councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Yes, Councillor Clark. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Lovell. Councillor Clark. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Just, I'd like to note that the word has been around recently regarding bulk billing services for GPs, and it's been all over social media, etc., and people are panicking about how they're going to pay, but it's really good to note here that the bulk billing will still apply to certain people, children under the 14 years of age and patients over 70 years with a healthcare card. So, yeah, etc. That's really good to note, and it's good if we can get that information out there, because people are panicking a little bit about this.
Definitely. Thank you, Councillor Clark. There has been quite a lot of chatter on social media over this one, so, and I believe that all circumstances would be taken into consideration. So, do I have any councillors speak against this motion? No? Is there any other questions or statements to be made about this? Okay, no. All right, so as there's no councillors speak against the motion, then I put the motion, and all those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. It's that time again to advise the council is about to go into closed council. Thank you to those people who joined our gallery this evening, and those of you who took the time to watch the meeting online this evening. The next ordinary meeting of the council is on Wednesday the 28th of September. Thank you. Thank you very much. So this here, yep. Yep. The recommendation 20.47/22 is that the meeting now be closed to the public as at 7:41.
41, did you say?
7:45.
45.
Yep, pursuant to Regulation 15 of the meeting procedural regulations to discuss the following matters: confirmation of closed minutes, general reports, closed council electricity way leave easement, acquirement of land, and tender, supply and delivery of 2 9-yard trucks, and a petition regarding termination of the contract of the General Manager. Do I have a councillor to move a motion? Councillor Lovell, a seconder. Councillor O'May. I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand.
We're going to have any questions, sorry?
Not here. Not here.
No questions.
Not here. No, not at the moment. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. So, in accordance with the Huon Valley Council audio recording of council meetings policy, recording of the open session of the meeting ceases at